You're listening to episode 46 of the Business Building Rockstars Show.
You're listening to the Business Building Rockstars Show, where your host, Nicole Holland, gets the lowdown from today's most talented, inspiring, and successful entrepreneurs on what it really takes to reach rockstar status.
Do you want to get your message out in a bigger way by being a guest on a web show or podcast just like this? If you do, text the letters I am ready to 33444, and I will send you free of charge a guide called How to Be a Great Guest. Don't make rookie mistakes that so many people do when they're starting out. Get known as a great guest that hosts search for free by texting I am ready to 33444. So to spell that out, it's the letters I am READY to 33444, and I will send you a complimentary copy of my guide, How to Be a Great Guest.
Well, this episode, number 46 with Tim Paige, was super interesting to me because I know quite a bit about Tim, I think. I've interviewed him before and also been following his work. He's an absolute legend. But today, we're talking about some stuff that I had no idea about, and you might be surprised too. So without further ado, Tim, the Paige, and I on the importance of validating your ideas before you actually create a business. Here we go.
Hey, welcome to the Business Building Rockstars Show. I'm so excited to be hanging out again with Tim Paige. He's the conversion educator at Lead Pages, an experienced marketer in all forms of media. Tim spends his days speaking to the most successful marketers across multiple industries, along with business owners looking to increase their marketing efforts. In his short time at Lead Pages, Tim has already helped grow their customer base to 25,000 and increase their list by another 20,000 leads. However, I have a feeling that this is a bit of an older bio, so I'm going to have him check in and let me know the real numbers. But Tim's also a father, a husband, and a diehard Syracuse Orange fan, not to mention a comic book fanatic. Tim, thanks so much for being here with me today.
Oh yeah, thanks for having me here. I'm pumped to be here. That is a little bit of an old bio. I got to update that, but things.
Yeah. What are your numbers now? Because we met for the Business Building Rockstars Summit in 2015, and I seem to remember they were way bigger than that at that time.
Yeah, we're at Lead Pages. We're at about 44,000 customers and 200,000 subscribers.
Beautiful.
Yeah, quite an uptick in results. And then, of course, we've got Center, which is the product that we just kind of pre-launched, and all sorts of awesome stuff going on.
So cool. And I'm an affiliate for Lead Pages, and I just love getting all the news about what you guys are up to. I'm a huge fan. But you are not here today to talk about Lead Pages. We're here to talk about you. Not only are you doing all of these things, but you're podcaster, you do voiceovers. Like, tell me about what you do day to day as an entrepreneur.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the vast majority of my workday is doing things for Lead Pages, whether it's webinars or our podcast or whatever. But outside of that, I'm a professional voice actor. I'm a SAG-AFTRA voice actor, union actor. So I mostly do, TV promos and stuff like that. You'll hear me as the voice of a lot of UFC promos. I've got kind of this deep UFC voice. And I've done some stuff for the CW. I do a lot of stuff for New York One, which is the Time Warner Cable news station in New York City, one of the biggest news stations there. I've done some video games and lots of commercials, and anybody with young kids has probably heard my voice on the Miles from Tomorrowland toy commercials. So it's complete opposite of UFC. It's like Miles from Tomorrowland, blast off. But that's what I do for my voiceover stuff. I also I run the podcast for Lead Pages called Conversion Cast, and I have a very fun, very informal podcast of my own called Getting Into Comics, which is just designed to help people kind of get into comics for the first time or reignite their excitement about comics for the first time since they were a kid.
Sweet. And so let's talk about comics for a minute. When you were a kid, is this where it started, or did you get into comics as an adult?
I got into comics as a kid. I used to read X-Men and New Mutants, and after that, X-Force. I was a big X fan. That was my big thing. I read some Spider-Man and whatnot, but any X property was always my favorite.
Right on. And so when you were a little kid and you were reading your comics, I'm guessing collecting and maybe trading, what was it that you foresaw yourself being when you were a grown-up?
It's interesting. When I was younger, I wanted to be a Spanish interpreter for the UN. I don't know how that ties into anything that I ended up doing, but I got really serious about it in high school. I took a lot of extra classes for it and stayed after and did that kind of stuff. And I got to college and all that changed. But for whatever reason, I just loved speaking Spanish. And then, of course, became an adult and forgot 75% of what because I knew I probably couldn't. I couldn't become Nightcrawler, which is what I really wanted to be when I grew up.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. So, how did you get to where you're at right now? Like, I don't even know what to ask you right now because there's so many different things going on, because you've been with Lead Pages for a while now, but before that, you were already getting into entrepreneurial endeavors and you were already doing really cool stuff based on your passions. Like, how did all that play out?
Sure. Yeah. Well, so I guess the point in all of that I didn't mention is that the one big dream thing that I always wanted ever since I was a kid was to be a performer of some kind. So what I really, really passionately wanted to do more than anything else was to be a musician. And so what I did when I was in high school, the whole time I was in high school, was I was in all these, high school garage bands and that kind of thing. But shortly after high school into college, I started to take it a little bit more seriously and, formed some bands that now I listen back and they weren't very good. But at the time we thought they were good.
Yeah.
And we played a lot of shows and that kind of stuff. But eventually I formed a band that actually gained some traction. And one of the things about being in a band, especially an original band, I know a lot of cover bands, you can book gigs and that kind of thing, but we were an original band and we wrote all of our own music. One thing about that, it's a very entrepreneurial endeavor. You have to find a way to support yourself, to be able to book all the shows, to be able to fill the van or bus with gas, to be able to do all those things that we had and buy merchandise and all those things. So we had to get really, really good at all those different things and budgeting and being careful about the things that we did. And so we ended up, because of that, because I had kind of an entrepreneurial mindset, we toured full time for about 6 years. We were signed to a record label in New York City called Triple Crown Records. We were on the same record label as Brand New and Hit the Lights. We played Warped Tour. We did Bamboozle, South by Southwest. We did all these amazing things, and we were on TRL on MTV. And the interesting thing about all that was never really made much money, but we were able to make all of that work. And so the thing that transitioned me into an entrepreneur in terms of trying to support myself was while I was doing that, when we would come home from tours, we would have a 2 or 3 month tour. We'd come home and be home for a couple of months, or we'd stay home for a few months in the winter because it's crazy. And so what I would do is I went back to the thing that I had learned when I was 18 years old, which was sales. I always learned sales. It always made sense to me, the psychology of showing somebody something that can help them and convincing them to actually take action on that. That was something I always understood. So throughout all those years I was in the band, I would always come back and get these sales jobs where it was easy for me to go in, make as much money as I could to try to cover those other months while we were on tour, and know that all the bills would be paid and we'd be covered. And all of those skills just kind of came together through the band and everything. And that led me down this road of really starting some more, I guess, traditional businesses and then moving that into the world of more specifically online-based marketing.
Very, very cool. Wow. Yeah. What an adventure.
It's been really fun, and so I guess there's a part of this story where it sounds all like, oh, successful and musician and doing all these things and being good at sales and good for you. Of course, throughout all that, there was a whole lot of failure. There were a whole lot of times where, we were on tour and 6 shows fell through. And so we had to drive, an 18-hour drive with no income and not sure how we were going to have enough gas to get through. So one of the things that we would do is we would go to a local mall. We would hang out. We would find, at that point it was like FYE, which I think there's still 1 or 2 somewhere in the country. It was, the Hot Topics and the Spencers. And we would go there and we would find the kids that were maybe wearing shirts of other bands, that we would like. And we would say, hey, before you walk away, hey, check this out. This is our band. And they would listen to it. And we'd be like, look, if you like that, we're trying to get gas to get to our next show. We've got our CDs and we were selling them for $5 or $10 or whatever. And we would do that. We would go to local shows that were happening and we would talk to the other bands. We say, look, do you mind if we, after the show's over, if we talk to some of the kids to try to get them to buy our stuff? And we would do that. And sometimes we would even go to a local show before it started and say, hey, we're from New York. We had a show fall through tonight in so-and-so town. Anyway, we could jump on early. You don't have to pay us. We just want to play and sell our stuff and get a few gigs that way. So we really had like that, what's Gary Vee call it, the hustle muscle. Like we had the hustle muscle big time. And so then we, when we were winding down, we got home and I got into selling vacuums door to door. That was kind of the business that I got into, and I was making good money doing it, and I hated what I was doing so much, but I was making a ton of money. I opened my own office and had a bunch of people working for me. And so what I was doing throughout that time, making all this money, was I was thinking there's got to be a better way. I can't be stuck having this business run my entire life. I was getting married, and then shortly after that, we were planning to have a baby, and I just didn't want to live a life like that. So throughout that process, I started to listen to podcasts like Pat Flynn's Smart Passive Income. I started to listen to, at that point, Entrepreneur on Fire wasn't out, but a little bit later it was, and I listened to that. I listened to Internet Business Mastery. I read every blog I could find. I joined every kind of community that I could find and learned as much as I could about how to build a business online. So in doing that, I had started a podcast, which had zero focus at all. It was called The Awesome Podcast. Incredibly vague, not that awesome. Had really great guests, though. And 2 amazing things came from that podcast. One was that I had made all these amazing connections with all these people that I had on the podcast that didn't know me from Adam. I had Pat Flynn on the show. I had John Lee Dumas on the show. And that was when Entrepreneur on Fire had like 10 episodes and nobody knew who he was. And I was the first person to ever interview him on a podcast. And we became such good friends, and we've remained friends after all these years. We talk all the time. And, it's one of those things that like, that's a friendship that I got because we had a podcast and we were like, hey, let's have you on my show. And so I made all these friends with all these people that were several years ago. And now all those folks, or many of those folks, are still good friends of mine to this day. So that was one good thing that came out of that really poorly done business venture. The other thing that came out of it was I was creating my own podcast intros and outros. And so I did this one, and it was the one that interestingly enough was what set me off on the path to become a voice actor. I wanted to do the traditional corny movie trailer voice. So I produced this whole thing with sound effects and this big epic music. And, I did a really bad Don LaFontaine. I was like, in a world where zombie entrepreneurs will follow the latest trend, one man will change everything. And it was like horrible. But because it was so unique, I had people reaching out to me left and right saying, hey, that's really cool. You did that. Would you do a podcast intro for me? And so I started to make a few people for, just friends for fun. And after a while, I was like, I got to start charging for this. This is crazy. And so, I started doing that, turned that into a whole business of just creating podcast intros and outros, writing the scripts, finding the music, putting it all together, producing it, doing the voiceover. And from there, I was like, I really like doing this. This is performing, but without having to be on the road all the time. I'm going to look into this world of voiceover. So I started coaching with a guy who is just really prolific in the world of voiceover. His name's Rick D. Wasserman. If you watch AMC, you've heard his voice. He does all the promos for AMC. So it's like, coming up next on The Walking Dead. That's Rick. Great guy. And so he coached me and taught me a lot about the business. And from there, I started taking it really seriously and going crazy. I had 4 coaches at one point. Now I'm down to 3. And just really building this whole business, getting these amazing clients. And eventually that led to me signing with one of the top 5 voice acting agencies in the world, Atlas Talent. In my opinion, they're the number 1 voice acting agency, but I'm being diplomatic. They're unbelievable. And that's really just taken my career to an entire another level. Now I'm auditioning for and booking these incredibly amazing high-level national campaigns, all as a result of this weird little opportunity that presented itself almost on accident, just because something I was doing, I was really enjoying, I had fun with it, and people went, oh, that would be cool. I'd like to have you do that for me.
So amazing. I love, love, love your story. And what I think is a really good takeaway is that you built the most successful business upon what you enjoyed. And you got there by allowing people to let you know what they wanted more of from you. And the more you did, the more they wanted. And it was something that it wasn't stressful. It wasn't hard. And I think that's something so valuable that a lot of people think that, if I'm going to build a business, it's going to be tough work. And it's like, yeah, you got to have that hustle and you got to keep going. But when you find that sweet spot, it's like, keep digging in, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing. I had started tons of failed businesses that never went anywhere. Some made a little money, some made no money. I had started a few successful businesses that I hated, but I was making money. But this was the first one where it was like, I'm not doing this to start a business. I'm just doing something that I enjoy. And it turned out that I had a basic level natural talent, very basic level natural talent. And people wanted it, and there was a need for it out there. And there was only one other person in the space that was doing anything for podcast intros and outros. There were the occasional voice actor there was the occasional voice actor out there that had that as a part of their portfolio, but there was really only one company that was doing things entirely focused on podcast intros and outros, and they also spread their focus to a bunch of other places. So for me, it was like, oh, I'm already doing this, and I love podcasts, and I have a podcast. I understand what podcasters are looking for, and I get sales and marketing. Why not combine all of that into this one thing that, at first was, what a few people would call beer money, although I don't drink beer. It was like just this little bit of income, a few $100s a month here and there. And now I've done, at this point, over 600 podcast intros and outros in, I think, 4 years. So it really was, it was partially luck, which we can't discount that. There's a lot of luck in business, no matter what anybody says. And it was partially that I really enjoyed what I was doing. I mean, how fun was it to be sitting out there just being ridiculous and turning that into something people loved. And then part of it was that being willing to say, oh, there's an opportunity here. I'm going to jump on this and see what happens, and building everything around that. But I didn't build a website. I didn't get a logo. I didn't do all those things until I already had clients and I was already bringing in money. And I think that's one of the things that it's something that's coming up more and more now in business is people have this tendency to go, oh, I have this idea for a business, so I'm going to go and get a logo and get a website, and I'm going to create this product, and I'm going to do all these things and write all this stuff, and I'm going to go market it. And they're $10,000 or $50,000 or $100,000 in the hole in 6 months or a year or 2 years or 5 years without ever knowing if anybody even wants what they're making in the first place, other than a few affirmations from their friends and family where they go, hey, I'm thinking about starting a business, crocheting, I don't know, sweaters or something. And everybody goes, yeah, that's great. I would totally do that. And so they go, oh, that's the affirmation of what I want. And they go make it. And then they can't find a need for it in the marketplace and they struggle. So yeah. I didn't know I was doing that, by the way, at the time. I had no idea that was what I was doing. All I knew was people are giving me money and I'm doing this thing and it's great. And then I turned it into a business. Now it's systematized. Now it's scalable. Now I have a team. But that all came years after I ever collected my first payment.
Brilliant. So important. And in fact, today, the day we're recording, Clay Collins' new program starts, which I'm super excited for because he's very big as well on pre-selling. And obviously you did that so well. I think, Yeah, definitely. I talk to people all the time who are like, oh yeah, I'm going to start selling, but first I'm just waiting for this web developer I hired to do a website. And oh, I just got a name. Like, do you like this name? And making a logo. And then I'm going to go start selling. And it's one of the biggest mistakes that we make, me included, when we're starting out in business, I think.
Yeah, we've all done it. You know what I mean? We've all done that. We've all made that mistake. And you know, Clay talks about this all the time, is that it is the common path, the one that feels the easiest. There's the least amount of friction when you do it that way, when you go and create your product and do all those things, because there's kind of a low barrier to actually doing that. It's not that hard to go out and find a designer and to get a developer and get a website made and get a product made and do all this. That stuff is all fairly easy, and it doesn't require any kind of commitment. It doesn't require any kind of pain until down the road, after you've already done all that stuff and then nobody buys it, then it's just all that pain built up. Whereas if you do the pre-selling thing, if you go that route, if you get people to tell you what they want and then give you the money for that thing before you ever make it, you know, sure, you may create something that people don't want. They won't, or I'm sorry, you may have the idea for something, think it's going to be great, find out that the market doesn't want it, and now you've saved yourself months or years and tons of money from having to do that. And again, it's interesting sometimes how how sometimes people will just go, hey, you know a lot about this one thing, could you help me with that? Or hey, you're really good at this thing, could you do that for me? And suddenly that business comes out. And people come to me about this a lot. I actually get a lot of people that ask me, hey, how do I start a business? And I always ask them, like, what do people ask you about? And they go, well, nobody ever asks me about anything. I'm like, no, come on. There's something that you're really either excited about or good at that you just naturally do that you don't think much about, that somebody would love to know more about or would love to buy from you. For example, we've got some construction happening on our house, and the guy that is working on our house, the contractor, first off, he's become a good friend, but he has an unbelievable skill set for basically all things construction and carpentry related. In fact, the booth I'm standing in right now, he built from the ground up. And what's funny is that there are people all over the world that would love to have a custom booth that have no idea what needs to go into it. And so he and I were talking about it, and I was like, you know, you knew how to do this stuff because you understand basic acoustics and sound dampening and all these things. But there are a lot of people all over the world that don't have access to somebody like you. If you could, you know, draw up plans, custom plans for somebody, and then they could take that to their contractor, you wouldn't have to be all over the world to do it, but they could just take those plans to their contractor and the contractor just follows those plans. You now have this really scalable business model that's really easy to follow, and you'd be selling it before you ever did anything, before you ever spent any time. And then he took that, and in the next week he had 2 clients.
That's so great.
So you never know what your special skill set is that you're good at, that you're passionate about, that people are willing to pay for until you ask.
Yeah, and I think you hit something there too, that oftentimes we have no idea because it comes so naturally that we don't even realize that it doesn't come naturally to everybody.
Right, exactly.
Cool. Tim, I could talk to you all day, but I know you've got places to go and people to see, and as do I. So I'm going to just wrap up with one final question. What is, other than lead pages, as an entrepreneur, what's your favorite online tool that helps you do what you do best?
I would say it's Adobe Audition because I spend so much time recording things.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I wish that I had some special magical tool. But if I looked at what I'm using, it's, you know, I'm using Samcart for my checkout. I love Samcart, unbelievable tool, great for getting one-click upsells. I'm using ConvertKit for my email marketing. Got great, simple automation. I don't need a lot. I'm using lead pages for my landing pages and sales pages and all that. And then I use Squarespace for my actual website. And that's it. You know, it's really, I've got a really simple business. It works really well for me. So I would say those are probably the tools I use the most.
Awesome. Yeah. Simple is really, really powerful. Very good. Well, thank you so much. It's been a blast as always. And I look forward to seeing you in Chicago.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll see you there.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you did, make sure to subscribe on iTunes so that you don't miss another episode. And if you're just joining us for the first time, welcome. Thanks so much for being here. And if you want to catch up on past episodes, it's super easy to do when you subscribe on iTunes. Also, we're on Stitcher, and of course, you can visit bbrshow.com for all of the episodes, show notes, and more. I would love to hear what you think about today's episode by leaving a review on iTunes, or also you can go to bbrshow.com, and on our show notes page, there is a comment section. Dear listeners, I do this show for you, so the more you let me know what you love, the more I can bring you that. Don't forget that the Business Building Rockstar Show releases every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So 3 times per week, you can listen in to what the journey towards rockstar status entrepreneurship is really like. Until next time, thanks so much for being here. I appreciate you, and I look forward to connecting again real soon.
And there you have it. If you enjoyed this episode of the Business Building Rockstars Show, be sure to subscribe on iTunes so you don't miss a thing. And visit bbrshow.com for all the show notes and links to resources discussed on today's show. Plus, lots more.